Well, good morning, church. And this morning we're going to be looking at Daniel again and just what we can learn from his life. We're going to be focusing on the third discussion question from the sermon notes with this week, which say, why was it important for Daniel to resolve not to defile himself with the royal food and wine? And it has you read James 1, chapter 1, verse 27 that says, what are ways we can be and are being polluted by the world, and what are steps we can take to keep ourselves from being polluted by the world around us? There's a lot that we can dive in with that, but starting off, I think it's important to acknowledge our culture is constantly trying to pour into us and get us to think a certain way. Whether it's through social media, trying to skew what things you're even interested in buying by the ads that show up. I know it's creepy to all of us that you start talking about something and all of a sudden you got an ad for it just on your phone within like 10 minutes. So our culture is constantly trying to grab our attention and try to force us towards certain things. And unfortunately, the same is true of the church. That culture is constantly trying to shove the church into thinking a certain way or to reacting in a certain way. And one thing I hope is always true of our thought process is that although we are always trying to find new ways to share the gospel with the culture we're in and ways that would more effectively share the gospel with the culture we're in, that we would recognize the message doesn't change. We can't change our message just because culture might not like a certain part of it. The gospel hasn't changed in thousands of years, and it's not going to. It's everything we have in the gospel is in this book. It's already decided for us. And just because there's some people that maybe they're going to be offended by a small part, we share it in a loving way, but that message has to come through. That God's the same today, yesterday, and He's going to be the same God tomorrow. We need to make sure we're sharing this gospel message and not allowing culture to twist it or to have us using it for some other motive. And unfortunately, there's a lot of that in our world today. People twisting the message of the gospel to try and push a selfish agenda or some agenda that just flat out isn't what God's word was meant to do. And so as you look at James chapter 1, verse 27, he says, pure and undefiled religion before God the Father is this, to look after orphans and widows in their distress and to keep oneself unstained from the world. We need to do our best to make sure that the things of this world that we don't need to be spending time doing, that we're trying to avoid it. That the types of thoughts that can pollute us and change our motives and twist what we should be doing, try to avoid those things. Make sure we're not falling into those same traps that the rest of the world is. We're called to be different as followers of Jesus. And pure and undefiled religion is making sure to look after others before yourselves, especially those who are oftentimes forgotten about in society. And so as believers, how can we do that? How can we make sure that the world is not twisting our views, that we are turning first and foremost to God's word? We need to pray and be in God's word. Those are the Sunday school answers that we point to a lot with these discussion questions, but it's because it's so true. The way we're going to know what the gospel message is and how to deliver it more and more clearly is being in God's word and learning more ourselves so we can articulate it better. And we need to be praying, God, help me to see the areas I need to change. Help me to see what things I need to cut out of my life altogether. And let me continue to grow and share the gospel message with those in my life that they might come to know you. So that's the challenge, church. That's our mission. So be praying that God would open your eyes to how you can be better and more effective at sharing the gospel. And ultimately, that's just going to take God working through you. So pray that God would give you those opportunities. We'll see you soon.